everybody, this is episode 17 of A Curious Character. I am your host, Rox De Leon. This episode is a conversation with Ryan Antonio, a computer engineer and aspiring educator. Ryan and I spent almost 2 hours talking about our dreams and aspirations, how he got into engineering, how he started to love research and teaching, and what he wants to be when he grows up. This is one of the longer podcasts, so without further ado, let's get started with this episode. Hi, Rai.
Hi, Rox.
Hello. So for this episode of A Curious Character, we're going to try a different format of podcast recording
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
typically what I do for previous episodes was I had a specific set of questions already
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
the guests, no? But for
Yeah.
this one, what I wanted was for us to basically just talk about our dreams and aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
do you want to be when you grow up? So basically, I think this conversation, how did we how did we come up with this topic?
Yeah. I believe it was last week when we were just talking about our what we want to. How are we gonna apply for our PhD degrees? Looking for schools and looking for research opportunities and things like that. And then I think we ended up here when we shared our websites. We exchanged our websites. Oh, guys, by the way, if you like to see Rock's website, it's in roxdeleon.com. Okay. So she shared hers and then I shared mine, although mine is not published yet, but um, Rox has this nice website which inspired me to write my own too. So I was like, oh, okay, let's go. I think that's where it started.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too. And I looked at I looked into your website which you
Mhm.
shared and for friends only access for now.
Yeah.
And what I found interesting was that I think it is it your first post about how it all started.
Yes, yes. It was talking a lot about how it began this journey that I want to this journey this adventure that I want to take on. Okay, so siguro, or how would I say this? It's gonna be a long story because since you read it already, but if it's for the viewers and I don't have my website really published yet, no. How would I start? Throughout the I'm already around 27 years old. So throughout my 27 years, it's been I'm very indecisive. Okay. In that whole path. And it's only now that I'm claiming the things that I want to do. Okay. But there's so many factors, okay, that got into it. As in adami. And I guess one of the contributions on everything that happened to me ever since elementary until now. Pero, yun ba? Do you want us to discuss that? The post that I
Yeah,
made?
I think we can start with because actually that's always the question that I'm interested to learn more about people is
Mm-hmm.
at least for those people that I get to talk to is why did you take the path that you take? So for your case, let's start with why did you study engineering and is it something that you really wanted to pursue,
Ah,
you know?
okay. That's a very good, very good question. Okay. All right. So to be honest, I did not choose engineering because I really wanted it. Okay. So just a brief background, right? Um, Back in high school, or actually even in elementary, let's bring it back way further, around starting from preparatory school. Okay, and preparatory, elementary, and high school. When I was in elementary, I was so bad with math. Okay, so to the point that my grades were flunking, and even my parents were wondering if I was even a studio student that time. There were times my mom would teach me, my dad would teach me too, but no, it just couldn't get in. Right, so I was really bad in math, but there was one thing I was good at, and believe it or not, but I think my skills deteriorated right now. Right? But I used to join art clubs back then. Okay. So, by the way, in my elementary, I studied in Cadet School, Quezon City. So I'm dropping the name there. It was a good
Oh.
school back then. Yeah, until grade six. So from prep to grade six, yeah. And I did join a lot of art classes that time. Even summer classes, they're all art classes. And I love drawing, I love painting. And even during that time, I think around what 6 to 12 years old, my favorite uh, thing to draw was about Dragon Ball, with the fancy hair and yellow. Yeah, those were the things I did. And it was art, really, that was my passion back then. When I got to high school, I studied in Quezon City Science High School. It's a good school. Yeah, I mean, most science schools are really good because they really get you into the math and science side of things. All right. But I was still an artist back then. Not really good. No, I'm not. You see, I don't have that artist's hand, wherein what you can imagine in your head and you just draw it. It just gets up there, and it's so some artists have these nice and slick drawings. No, my drawings were really a messy kind. But I loved it. That drawing oil pastels and all of that. But it was because in science school, and thanks to my teachers, I guess, I developed my interest in math particularly. I was not really good still, but when math is like philosophy, right? It's solving problems, solving patterns, abstract reasoning. It was fun to do. Okay. And although, admittedly, I didn't really perform well also in high school because I had too many distractions and things like that. And then college came, right? And I believe even you experienced this, that in our fourth year of high school, we're applying for our entrance exams to different schools. Okay, and in UP in particular, my first choice, to be honest, was ECE. My second choice was COE. And then I think my
Third
third
choice,
and
EE.
fourth,
Joke.
no, not EE. Oh, no, third choice I think was computer science. Yeah. And my
Wow.
fourth, believe it or not, was speech pathology in UP Manila.
So your
Yeah.
your third choice, which is computer science, is in UP Manila. Is it? No.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think that
Yeah.
was the time. Yeah. Like two in your
Wow.
main school, and then another two in a different branch. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. Back in high school, I joined theatrical arts. Okay, I was part of the theatrical arts club, and we had that one project. It was like what do you call this? It was William Shakespeare, a bridge. Actually, you can find the original cast. Not me, okay. The original European cast. I think I can remember in YouTube. If you just look for
Mm-hmm.
your William Shakespeare, a bridge, they're there. And that's something that that was one of our projects back then. And I love theater. Okay. So you could see right now, by that time, maybe from elementary to high school, I was more of a artist side of person rather than the math and science side. But then, okay, going back, moving forward to college, right? When I applied for EC and COE as my first two choices, because I was told that my parents told me, or actually everyone in my family told me that if you take engineering, um, when you graduate, you'll be able to find good jobs. And by good jobs, it pays well. There are nice benefits, and you actually contribute a lot to, I mean, indirectly to society, but you do make an impact because you're really making products, and, things like that. And truth to be told, when I joined ADI just last year, June 2020 last year, it's true, actually. If you do graduate as an engineering student, and let's say you did well, and then these companies that are available to you, and engineering is a good job. Yes, it does. It does pay well, decent, more than what people usually get, or I would say it's above the average. If we put the Gaussian curve of the average salaries, we're gonna be in the upper part of it. Okay, and ADI is a really good company. And I am amazed at how they handle their employees, the management, the environment, the culture. I would say it's really healthy actually. So I was like, okay, it's a really good job. But then, so yeah, it's true. It's an engineering thing. But then, yeah, I guess going back to the original question you asked earlier, was engineering my really the path that I chose? I would answer it in a way that it eventually became the path that I chose. So okay, sorry, patalon-talon. No, it's jumping here and there, but
Yeah.
one step back again to college. So yeah, I got into COE, which was my second choice. Okay. I didn't get to into ECE for unfortunately, but I mean it's not really unfortunate. Eco later on when I got into when we got into Triple E, COE, ECE, they're just in the same field
Yeah,
anyway.
pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just later on the specializations are different. What do you call this? In third year, okay. Actually, from first to third year, I was already wondering if engineering was still something that I wanted to do. And thankfully, we had very good professors like Sir Adele, Sir Chito, Sir Rico. It was them, they were the junior faculty at the time, who inspired me uh, to do better in engineering. Okay. But sorry, going back to the third year part, see, third year was the breaking point. That was, or rather, the third turning point. Third year was the year that we took our most beloved subject, Triple E 41.
Yeah.
I
So
remember.
for context, Triple E 41 before is now Triple E 141, I think.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'm not sure too. One for one.
Should be circuit, what's the course title of that course? Anyway, solid
I
state
can't
circuits,
remember.
something like that, right? From BJT's
It could
MOSFET.
be. Yeah, that
Okay.
one. Okay, interesting. So they just added another number. One for one. But yeah, so Triple E 41 was during our time was semiconductor physics. Yeah, and I think the one that we took was an experimental. They changed the curriculum to be more physics heavy. I think it was an experimental curriculum that time. And oh boy, I think that broke us. I don't know if you remember, but that was the time when it
Yeah,
felt
first exam,
so.
the first
Yeah,
exam, so we had two exams, right? First
yeah,
exam, no one passed.
yeah. I remember. Yeah.
The highest score was NJ. He scored
Mm.
59 out of 100.
Oh, oh
Okay,
boy.
share.
Yeah, and then the second two. Oh, I think the second a few
Yeah,
more
yeah, a
passed.
few more people passed.
Yeah, but still, it's like majority. I think this is the time where the curve was so great. I think around 40 to 50, I think. Yeah, it was really. But anyway, that was also the time when I was already telling my parents that I'll be shifting out to something that I wanted to do more. Believe it or not, yeah.
What?
And I was considering moving to theater back then because for my love for theater that time, I love watching. Uh, well, not really a avid fan, but rather I had this very great desire to do theatrical arts back then, even in your first 3 years of college. So I did consider that. But
Wow.
then, for some fortunate reason, we passed 41 during that time. And I was like, okay, I or yeah, after passing 41, okay, that's the time when I thought to myself that, I think maybe if I gave, instead of fighting the idea that I didn't really like engineering back then, the most important thing that I learned was I should give it a chance, right? To learn and to give all my heart into learning this difficult subjects. And actually, the turning point also was after the first exam. Yeah, when you, I vaguely remember, but since now you just told me that all of us failed in the first exam, that's where I also decided, I guess, to start reading about the book, our book, Semiconductor Physics by Robert F. Peale. And when I read the book, as in, I even dropped my gaming for that. I dropped a lot of I wouldn't say it's sacrifice, but rather it was just really giving the chance to learn and love this subject. And I bet you've experienced it, or maybe in some of the subjects that you're even teaching now. When you're just sitting down in a corner, right, and you're just trying to read the material and focus, right? I mean, you get into a state of flow. Okay? So at that moment, because Robert Pierret wrote really well in that book, I gave a chance.
Wow.
I gave it a chance to read, and that's, I guess, is the most, um, or that's my advice to students who are taking semiconductor physics too. In one for one, like you said, you have to read the book. You have to sit down in a corner and read and start reading. I guess the problem with during our time, I don't know with you, but in my time, right, or in our time, in my experience, I was reliant on the lectures alone. I mean, how about you? Were you also just looking
I
through
read,
lectures? Yeah.
yeah, well, funny how you talked about or said read the book as if it's like just a novel that you would read and
Yeah.
enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But I read the book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I can't remember if I read it during like in conjunction with the
Mm-hmm.
lecture sessions, but I'm sure I read the book as we approach the midterms,
Mm-hmm.
and it describes or it talks about the discussion in a way that it's like telling a story,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
you're understanding
Mm-hmm.
essentially what's happening. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I read the book. In short, yeah, I read the book, and you wouldn't appreciate the lesson as much if you just relied on the lecture, because there is no, I feel like the
Yeah.
kulang sa continuity from one slide to
Yeah.
another.
Yes.
Whereas if you read the book, it's essentially, it's like a narration of the lectures itself,
Yeah.
providing background of what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I believe the way Robert Garrett wrote his book was exactly for that purpose. If you have to take time, I know reading a book takes a lot of time, right? But it's because it's in the form of a narrative, even for a difficult text with a lot of physics and a lot of math, because it's in the form of a narrative. It the taking in the information becomes easier as opposed to just looking at the slides where you just have bullet points there, right? Then you don't really have, it's just a phrase or a text, and then it's like nothing else, right? You cannot, you're right. I like the term that there's no continuity in the slides alone. So yeah. So yeah, going back, it's like jumping to right. I hope it's not messy, but I guess there are just many things that come in our discussion. Going back, because after reading that book, that's when I first learned to appreciate engineering.
What
Because
about what about
Mhm.
what about that book?
that what made me appreciate
Yeah.
engineering is
Mm-hmm.
because Triple E 41, if you try to remember, it's like the subject where everything that you've studied from first year to third year up to that subject converged into a single text. I'll give you an example. All the calculus, you'll find it there, right? Physics, definitions like charge, current, even the fundamentals, they're all in there. Right? What else? Circuit analysis, circuit theory, right? They have the small signal models, all the circuits. How do you transform them? What are the models? They're all in there, right? And don't forget, even writing. Well, for some of our G subjects, like including English and all creative writing, the way Robert Pierret wrote his text was, if you look at it carefully, he had there were humorous text at times. Like I think there was one discussion about the depletion width and things like that, and how it decays to zero. And then he used the analogy of feeding piranhas with food, and then you'll just see the food decay and things like that. You have to read the book. Okay? And then when you read the book, you'll see that everything converges to that single text, semiconductor physics. And that's where I only appreciated things like, oh dang, so everything I worked so hard from first year up to now, they're all in here, which gave me the excitement that there's something beyond than just semiconductor physics. And then our succeeding subjects, I mean, I'll admit that maybe some I didn't really appreciate so well because they're there's also a factor in how the course was delivered. Something like there are some books that are really difficult to read, right? They're just direct to the point, but maybe because they're made for professionals or academicians alike. Wherein sometimes you don't have. I get how some books are really technical only. They don't write with narratives in it. It's like, for example, TC7, they told our calculus book. If you actually reread it again, it's not really in a narrative fashion. It's a bit more of a theoretical side, and it gets boring at times. Okay, it's only for those who are into get into the text and they feel interested in it. No matter how theoretical it is, they'll read it. But if you're gonna give it to first timers, it's gonna be very difficult to understand. You know, things like that. And okay, so going back to that, yeah, it's only from there I realized that okay, engineering is a wonderful thing. It's a spectrum of all the colors. You know, I have family members who told me that, oh, you're so good in math and like that. Okay, but you have to appreciate the beauty of the world. They think math and science or engineering is like a black and white thing. There's this concept also where, or this preconception that, right, when you do math and science, you're a left brain person. Your world is
Right,
sort
right.
of black and white. No, I disagree. Okay, it's actually the entire spectrum. You know, check at it's actually the entire color spectrum. Okay, and like you, for example, in your engineering experience or right now, would you agree that like in your medical translation course that you took in Berkeley, right? Uh,
Yeah. Well,
I
yeah, if
believe
there's one,
it's the
if
entire. Mhm.
I agree with that, we were trained to think, or at least our upbringing trained us
Yeah.
to think in a limited mindset way.
Mhm.
What I mean is, we are trained to think that if you're good in math, you shouldn't be good in English or you shouldn't be good in the
Yeah.
arts. And
Mhm.
then when you think, and that was my mindset as well,
Mhm.
even as an undergrad. Like,
Mhm.
okay, didn't want to take the GEs or nonsense, things like that. And then when
Mhm.
when you graduate or when you start working on a research project, you realize, oh, I need to be able to communicate what I
Yeah. Mhm.
know really well. It's not only about the equations and all that. And now
Yeah.
that we're
Mhm.
applying like when I applied for grad school the first time, and then even now,
Mhm.
you're writing essentially
Mhm.
your story, and you're trying to convince them that this is what you want to do. And then you realize,
Mhm.
oh, I should have taken creative writing as an undergrad. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's about being well rounded and appreciating
Mhm.
it's like you have two worlds, and then we
Mhm.
were wired to think that these two words are mutually exclusive, and then you realize they intersect at some
Yeah.
point.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really important thing, I guess, that we also have to teach our students as a educator too. It's like
Yeah.
some people really, I don't know, I hope maybe the students right now, the recent ones, especially those who were in the K to 12 program, I think they have a better idea, or hopefully they do see engineering in a better perspective than how we were taught back then. But I guess yeah, it really evolves on that part.
Yeah.
So yeah, so did
Going back,
I
wait,
yeah.
so going
Mm-hmm.
back dun so basically, in summary, you realized, okay, I'm here to stay in engineering
Mm-hmm.
during Triple E 41, which is essentially, it's like the pinnacle of your
Yeah.
of our triple E life, essentially, right? 41,
Yeah.
51, those in our third year. So now I think
Yeah.
students are going through that on their second year.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if it's 13X or 14X series, but I'm sure it's one of those. So essentially that you learn,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to stay in triple E. But is there a reason, or after that course, so did that cement your decision to apply for microlab? Because during that time, the next step for us is to apply for a laboratory affiliation
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
where you'll be doing your undergrad project. So
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
it just a non-negotiable that, okay, I like 41, I'll apply for microlab?
Okay, so that's a good question actually. Now I come to think of it, the reason why I really applied for Microlab was it all started with Sir Adel. Okay, he was a really good teacher back in COE 23, Triple E 21 and COE 23. He was really good. He was a really good teacher, and that's what prompted me to take Microlab. Okay? And then when I knew that semiconductor physics was in Microlab, I tried to back out, but then because we passed Triple E 41, that's when I said, no, I'm gonna apply for Microlab. You know? I think no matter how hard it is, the challenge is it's addicting. You know, I think the challenge of taking on something that you don't understand at first, but then when you start to understand it, it becomes really addicting. You know, because once you understand it, and then you have this that feeling of you want to share it to others too, right? So I wouldn't say it's the one that really convinced me to take micro was Research Adele. That's the answer to that. And then I think
Okay.
Microlab that time was Intel Lab back then. So you know because
Yeah,
during that
IML
time,
was still
yeah,
IML.
it was still IML. So I wanted to join something related to Intel. But then when I joined, they said, "Oh no, it's not Intel anymore." Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
mhm.
So we're recording this in 2021, and by this time, Adele still has a year before he graduates
Oh
from his
yeah.
PhD. So
Mhm.
batch 2018 wouldn't meet him most likely, but the younger batches probably will. So watch out.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
a good prof, good prof.
Yeah.
But,
He's
before
excellent.
before
Mhm.
we jump to end of undergrad to start of
Mhm.
your masters, I was gonna ask something, and that
Mhm.
is, um, I'm just curious how well you did in Triple E 41, and will that be a deciding factor, or do you have to be good at this for you to join a certain lab,
Mhm.
or will your interest and enthusiasm to learn be enough? And the reason why I'm asking that is because people would say that if you, for example, if you want to join DSP,
Mhm.
so you have to enjoy triple E 35. So now it's triple E 135, I believe, signals and systems. So that's everything that involves Laplace, Fourier transform, and such. And then if you want to join, say, IRC or
Mhm.
RAL, you have to really be enjoying Triple E 101. And that
Mhm.
is now Triple E 151, analog and digital control. So that involves a lot of control system and designing controllers for robotic systems and all that. So yeah, the question is, do you have to be good at that? Or do you really just need to, be enthusiastic about learning?
That's a good question. I'm gonna ask you that too after. I want to know your thoughts too. But in my perspective, do I answer the way it was before or even just recent or in general? Are you looking for
Well,
just in general?
your current perspective about it. If you want to give us an idea of how you thought back then, also
Okay.
fine.
Back then I was clueless, so I didn't know if I needed to be good at it or not. Yeah, actually, that's a good question, because you get this impression that some students will say, "Oh, why are you taking that class?" I think during our batch, there were just 13 of us in Microlab. Just 13 who applied for our batch who applied. Just there were just 13 of us, and I
So
think
where
because
did everyone else go?
Mhm.
Where did
I don't
everyone else
know.
go?
I'm not really sure. Maybe also in Wasel, IRC, DSP too, yes. But during that time, I think people didn't like Microlab because they had they had this impression that you have to be good in 41, right? But when I got into Microlab and then up until now, it is important. Everything that you learn is important, right? But I wouldn't say you're gonna, in a practical sense, you don't have to be good or super good at it. Because in reality, in any class, right, you're going to forget some concepts, right? But the important part is you know how to review and get back to it when it's needed. When maybe let's define by when you are being good at something, right? When we say you're being good at something, it's like you're an expert, you you have it memorized, right? No, you don't have need to be you don't need to memorize things. I would say you have to have that passion, right, for that lab because you like it. Um, in a That's a bigger factor. Okay, let's put it into two things: being good and passion for that topic. Okay, if you have both, then you'll perform really well, or you'll be doing great in that lab. If you have passion but you don't really have the skills for it, let's say the you're not you need a lot of time to process it. It's better than just having the skills alone. Okay, because even though if you have that passion, you would spend all the time, you do all the notes that you have. Okay, to get back to it, and work on it. And that's something that you need to do well in that lab. But if you don't have the interest and you're just good at it, you'll do well probably, but you often find yourself unmotivated. Okay, you always find yourself burnout, and I think I've seen some people do this wherein they got into it because they think they're good at this, but because they lost motivation, okay, they actually start looking for something that they're more interested in. And then you also see people that who don't really perform really well in class, because maybe the topic would be just really be difficult, right? But they love the subject, you know. So it doesn't matter how long they stay in that lab. Maybe yeah, time kind of plays a role in it, but they're still staying because they know that they love the subject, right? If you don't have both, you have to look for something else, But I guess the point is I agree with what you said earlier that the passion or interest really plays a big part in it. So even though if you don't have the skills or you're not probably really good at it, don't worry, you'll be able to learn it eventually. Okay. And you don't have to be like the Suma standing or that. No, no, no. People who are in the Suma standing, they're really good. Okay. And maybe their brains are wired that way, but all of us, we don't have the same brain. Okay. We're not built the same way. Right? Some people understand it better than we do, but we understand things better than they do at times, right? So take it easy. As long as you like the subject, uh, you'll eventually get there. Okay, but just don't lose that passion, right?
Yeah.
You have to stick to it.
Yeah, I think it's
How
also
about
very
you?
different. It's also very different for different people. And I like your answer because my answer kind of similar with that one. And
Mhm.
now that I think about it, and I wanted to ask you earlier if while you were talking actually if but I don't think you regretted taking any other elective course because you already knew that you wanted to apply for microlab, right? So essentially the elective courses that you took
Mhm.
were microlab electives. Tama ba? Is that
Mhm. Yep.
safe to assume that? Yeah, okay. So
Yep.
for my case, it's very different because
Mhm.
um I I think the first time that I learned I wanted to pursue a project that has potential clinical application was earlier in my second year or something like that. Um, Basically, I started reading about health technologies and all that. I wrote, I had a blog post about that when I realized that I wanted to get into biomedical engineering. But
Mhm.
essentially, during that time, because we are in triple E,
Mhm.
it's electrical electronics. It's not really biomedical engineering. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you have to find a way to fit that to what what
Mhm.
what you're currently doing. How would you fit what you're doing with what you wanted to do, and that's to pursue a biomedical um, technology or biomedical project. So back then, I was actually trying to graduate earlier than my peers. So I was
Mhm.
taking courses alongside Charleston,
Mhm.
Ride de Belen, and Aldre, and also they're the group who are trying to graduate in 4 years. So, and because I didn't take the APE,
Mhm.
the placement exam for math, um, I think the earliest that I could graduate was 4.5 years. And Eugene
Mhm.
was actually the same batch.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, the
Mhm.
same curriculum or timeline as
Yeah.
we do. So by the time that I was in third year, I was already looking into applying for, at least after the first year, the first
Mhm.
semester, after 41, I was already looking into applying for a lab. And then I think it was third year, second semester, we have to take a triple E elective, diba? That is a prerequisite for a lab application.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I was forced sort of to decide back then what lab I should be taking. No?
Mhm.
So because I had the same timeline as Charleston, B-Boy 2010, Neil Gillian, I took several, no, yeah, several WASL electives to actually cellular networks and microwave engineering.
Mhm.
But I ended up going to IRC because that is where most biomedical projects are.
Mhm.
So for me, I really wanted to work into something biomedical related, and it doesn't matter what technique I have to use to get there.
Yeah. Mhm.
So more than, so for example, I could have gone into DSP and pursue
Mhm.
some medical imaging projects or speech recognition for
Yeah.
some, speech path clinical
Yeah.
needs or
Mhm.
something. But the problem is, I think advisor wise, I thought the advisors that would be able to provide me mentorship that I was looking for was in
Yeah.
IRC. And
Yeah.
basically I could pursue anything that I would be pursuing. So
Mhm.
in the end, even though I took two WASL elective that would qualify me to actually apply for WASL as my laboratory, I ended up going to
Yeah.
IRC. And then I
Mhm.
took the technopreneurship course, which is a prerequisite for getting into the
Oh,
lab.
really?
Yeah,
Mhm.
basically the first time that I applied until the semester I took my 190.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I was just sitting in. I'm not really enrolled, but I'm doing all the coursework twice just because it's part of your training itself.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's my point? So I think my point is similar to what you said.
Mhm.
Um it will depend to the person itself. Like, do you
Mhm.
want it to be based on what you're good at or what you're passionate about? But for
Yeah.
my case, it was based on what I was passionate about.
Yeah.
And I just
Mhm.
made everything work just so I could pursue that. And I was very persistent about getting into a biomedical project. Even
Mhm.
though now that I think about it, oh, I could have taken more signal processing electives because
Mhm.
that's more. I could see that the use of that at this point in my career over the, wireless comms elective that I don't really
Yeah.
use
Mhm.
a lot. Whereas if I have taken maybe a machine learning course, an introduction to deep learning or something, that would
Mhm.
be really
Mhm.
useful with biomedical engineering. But
Mhm.
then I thought, okay, I could just learn that now or
Right.
in the future, right? When we start doing our graduate studies and all that.
Yeah.
So
Can
yeah,
I ask, when you took IRC, right, and you were there in the IRC part, because when it's like you're telling me right now that there are other courses too that are sort of needed in that biomedical engineering end goal that you have in mind. Would you say that something like, sorry, let me rephrase my question. Did IRC actually also help in getting what you need to where you are right now?
for
Things like
sure.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Especially the technopreneurship class. And I think how we were managed in the lab itself, the way we think, that's critical. How you think about problems, how you think about solutions to those problems. And those are actually part of what I would say the hidden curriculum of our undergrad, because it's not really part of what we learn.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's more on how we think and how we solve
Yeah.
problems. And I think that's one thing that I learned from IRC is
Mhm.
which problems to address. It's not, I mean, curiosity is good,
Mhm.
but it's not enough, especially if you're looking to work on a project that is more into the translational part instead of curiosity-driven projects,
Mhm.
like when you look at the projects of the different labs, others would be because I'm curious to know what will be the performance of this versus this.
Ah,
Yung ganong project, di ba? Mga comparative studies or something.
guilty ata ako dun. No, because yeah, because in micro, yes, we do the way. If I'm gonna summarize what we do in micro, it's literally making larger systems into a microchip. How do
Mhm.
you, like, for example, regulators, control? How do you make them in a microchip? And then I guess if I'm gonna summarize, if what else in micro we are particular about performance. Will we be able to deliver this speed, this power for that particular application that you need? It's
Mhm.
more about, I guess you could say, it's more about trying to make systems into smaller ones,
Right,
right?
right.
It's literally that's what we're gonna do. But in your IRC, sorry, uh, you were trained more to. I mean, how would you summarize it? Like, for example,
I
in
would,
micro, it's making it small. In IRC, how do
yeah.
they do it? Yeah.
It has evolved throughout the years, but I would
Mhm.
say we are trained to think big picture first. What is the societal problem, and then how? Then I would imagine going into a
Mhm.
funnel. Then you would find a specific problem. It could even be a comparison. Like you could do a comparative study to assess
Mhm.
performance of one system over another.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
we always start with what is the big picture, what focus area. So, for example, there are
Mhm.
projects before on tuberculosis, so screening of TB. Or
Mhm.
for my project, it was newborn hearing screening. So first look into okay, what problem or what general field do we want to enter, and that's the one thing about IRC. Or at least for biomedical projects, you really have to start with a wide field, and even starting with that wide field, it's really vague. So we always start with that. And I'm not saying that, you know, doing comparative studies for undergrad project is um subpar or inferior to, projects that are,
Mhm.
high level, like high level, like directly address a certain societal issue.
Mhm.
But what I'm trying to say is there are different approaches. So for example, for microlab, yeah, you do a lot of performance assessments and all that. But from a student perspective, I think what we should take into consideration or remember is that even if you're working on, say, a performance comparative study between two techniques, you should have a vague understand, or not really a good understanding of its potential implication in the big picture. And
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
actually plays a role in, or that would actually be apparent when you write your manuscript, diba? For
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
proposal. So 196 and
Yeah.
199. So when you write your manuscript, the reader should see what the significance of your study is. And I think
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
IRC, that is one of the first things that we do before we actually do
Mhm.
as or before we come up with our problem statement. And I think for everyone also,
Yeah.
I think for every lab that is the case. It's just that we were given that much freedom to look into so many different
Mhm.
problems
Yeah.
just because it's just the nature of the lab itself. Whatever you're interested in, as long as it's
Mhm.
within the capacity of what the lab resources can give you can
Mhm.
pursue that. And I think for other labs, it's just that um, to avoid parang going around in circles, not
Yeah.
identifying your problem, bibigyan ka na nila ng topic on what you could work on. So
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
student, if the student did not really understand or look at the big picture things, the
Mhm.
student can take it as in specialized na siya. You know what I mean? Parang may ganun
Yeah.
na
I think.
aspect.
Yeah. Actually, I think. I'm gonna say it again. I think I'm guilty of that too.
Ah,
No, but rather, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the nature of the laptop. But I do get what you're saying, that you have to look at the bigger perspective and have to funnel it down.
yeah,
But in micro lab, at least for the ones that I worked on, the bigger perspective is really general.
yeah,
Something like we need low power devices. Why? Because we want to have devices that last a lifetime,
yeah.
right? Without the use of batteries, so things like that, right? So how do you achieve it? We're gonna funnel it down. Okay, there are techniques that are done this way. We need to add intelligence, artificial intelligence to our chip and things like that. And then suddenly, if you're gonna ask me if you're gonna look actually the trend of what we do, it's really focused somewhere there. If this is the funnel, okay, this is the what you were saying a while ago, the bigger picture. Okay, and then you know that the tiny part here of the
Yeah.
funnel. We're focusing so much here up to down
Yeah.
there.
And I think I
Yeah.
would think that is a good thing, and I realize that's one of my holes in my, if I look into my experiences, it's because I became so much of a generalist that it's becoming more difficult to me for me to have that specialization the way that
Mhm.
students say for micro, for Mosel, those people have, because you already focused on, you already are really good at this one thing. It's easier, I don't know, but my perspective is it's easier for you to branch out to something much bigger because you can already apply that specific skill that you already have, whereas for me, I am coming from a wide perspective and then specializing into something. And I don't know really which one is better. I think it would depend on how really you're packaging
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
But right now, I see that as one of my main holes in this
Actually,
process.
I think we're complementary. In my perspective, I think my biggest missing part is that upper part. It's like it's only now that I'm appreciating that. Okay, I should see this at a bigger perspective. Like for example, when I'm right now I'm working in ADI, right, and then I'm looking at all the projects, the products that they're doing. Okay, it's only there I realized that, okay, why are we making this product? Oh, we're gonna make it like an LED driver for automotives. Oh, we're gonna make it as a battery management system. It's only there I realized, so that's what we're making it for.
Yeah. And
That's
I
what.
think and I think one analogy for that is, for example, if you're working in a company, there
Mhm.
is a project manager or a product manager who is able to see the entirety of everything
Yeah.
in that product, no, and
Mhm.
there we have those engineers who are specialized in a specific
Mhm.
aspect, so engineers who are specializing in how, or trying to address the problem of how can we um, better improve the performance, or how can we improve the battery life, how can we make it more efficient, yung ganon. But there's a project manager who essentially is able to connect everything, every single part of your product. And I think right now I'm in that role. I am more into that, a project manager, but I wanted to be able to have that specialist track.
Skill set too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, that's a good one. I think we need all of it, and then maybe we're still young, so we have all the years to try to master, not necessarily master, but at least gain a skill point, a skill in that part where we're missing. Like
Yeah,
what they say, right? You build up on your weaknesses. you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
True. So
Mm-hmm.
I think na lost tayo sa topic, but I
But
it
it's
was a
nice.
good that was a good
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
And I think my next, or I thought about, wait, I'm looking at my notes. So how we
Mm-hmm.
ended up, do you really want to study? Then undergrad life, we already discussed that.
Yeah.
Pursuing masters.
Ah,
What,
okay.
why?
It's an easy answer. I wanted to teach. Okay. I guess what drove me to to have this desire to teach students was really because of all the professors and instructors that taught me. Okay. So first and foremost, Sir Adel. Okay. Laging binibida si Sir Adel. Yeah, we
Sabihin ka
can't take that
panoorin niya
down.
to. I'll ask him to watch this episode.
Hi, sir. But yeah, it really was Sir Adele because during that time, he became my instructor and professor for 2 years, two subjects, Triple 21 and COE 23. And lab instructor, I think for, no, it was Sir Snap already in COE 1 and 1. But it all started with Sir Adele. And then later on, Triple 105, Sir Chito came in. Sir Chito is the instructor where Actually, my triple 52, triple 105, co 143. For some reason, I enjoyed all his activities. And he's the type of instructor who is super fair. He's not too strict, he's not too lax. There's this, he's like the optimal point for some reason. Sir Cheat, right? And then Sir Rico was the third. But Sir Rico became my instructor for one subject only, I think, only one for one. It was the micro for digital circuits. And yeah, I also did enjoy his classes. We were making layout of the circuits, doing the circuit analysis and all of that. And all three of them, and actually Sir Rico was a good mentor too. During my um, MS, when I was taking my master's, he was there on the side. That's the time when we became quite close, and then he was mentoring me on some things to do, some things to think about, and things like that. It's because of them three. Okay? And then you have this higher level professors, Sir Louis, Montes, Sir Mike, Sir Chard. Okay. Ma'am Tata came in when I was taking up my master's already. Okay. And then but all the rest, Sir Snap also was during the undergrad. Kami, I was inspired by them. And because of that, I wanted to teach. It was all because of that. I had this idea that I can be very nurturing at times, especially when I have friends who needed help and I kind of try to help them out. And then I wanted to use that skill or that passion of trying to help others for students naman.
Can
Because
I interrupt?
yeah, sure.
So at this point, you didn't, because earlier you or before earlier in your life, you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to pursue theater. So at this
Yeah.
point, it's like gone, is it?
Yeah,
Or
it
what
actually,
happened to that?
after 41, I was still into it, but because I guess I spent more time studying all these engineering things, it just disappeared. I mean, I still like theater, right? I
And when
still
you
watch,
think about it, teaching is
yeah.
an art,
No,
essentially.
it is too, actually. And there's art stuff in there, trying to make the correct, not necessarily correct, but trying to make visualizations that make it easier for students to understand. Yeah. I still like art stuff. I still like watching movies, video games. I know some people say video game. I don't like competitive gaming because it just stresses me out. But I do like single player games because it's like the modern literature. I know people still like books. I like to read too. I like to watch documentaries. But there's something about video games as a contemporary literature. The way they put the art, the narratives. You can tell if it's a good game if everything is in there, right? But going back to the point that yeah, it just disappeared. my my passion to do theatrical arts. I'd rather just sit down and watch and appreciate it as an audience rather than making the art itself. But yeah, that's the
Okay.
one. Mhm.
So going back to teaching,
Well, back to teaching. I don't know. I just maybe because I was also influenced by my mom. My mom is a teacher for um, students with disability or kids with disability rather. This includes dyslexia, autism, slow learning. It's a neural it's a neural thing. Okay, so she teaches those kinds of students. And then when I was in my college, high school and college, she was actually taking her master's in education. My mom's a dentist actually, but she took MS education. Alayo, no? Because she want as another skill for her job. Because I guess she realized that teaching is something that you can also do at home, something other than her dentistry work. Because she realized that her hands are starting to deteriorate because of old age. So she wanted to do teaching. Maybe because of that, I also wanted to do teaching too. And hey, it's a really fun thing to do. I'm a very talkative person. You could see naman from this podcast. No? And I really like sharing ideas, teaching students, guiding them in the right direction. And I think the part that I like to do most is to convince them that they're on the right track, right? That engineering is a beautiful thing. You gotta push that. In our time, when in our 41 time, our professors did the same thing too, but maybe it wasn't pretty much there, the good side of it, because we were bent on the theoretical side, But in my class, when I was teaching 41, I have this, in my last 41 class before the pandemic, this is the first semester before the pandemic started. Every discussion, I have this 5 to 10 minutes sharing session. You ask my students, it's always there. And I share them cool things like how the brain learns, things that I do, things that I can help myself do better in class. Like, have you tried habitica.com already? Have you
Yeah,
heard of
you
it?
you recommended that to me, and then I used that for
Oh,
a while.
really? Yeah, yeah. I use that. I gave them, things like that. I tell them what I watch on YouTube, on Netflix, go channels like three blue, one brown. I think you're
Yeah, yeah,
familiar
I
with
know
that,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, the
And
channel.
yeah, your triple E 101 course, Brian Douglas channel.
Yeah.
Whoops. So I gave them to those. I gave them those materials, and hey, they started to appreciate these things. I think pretty much the things that was missing. I'm not sure with what you experienced, but in my time, what was missing, which I put in right now in my classes, is the context of why the relevance and meaning of why are we trying to study these courses. Right. So I put it in there, and then it carries over. And I'm happy to say that at least I've taught Triple E 41 3 times. In the beginning, I didn't have that. And in my next two lectures, they got better. They had better feedback, and then more students start to appreciate and pass the subject. They perform better than the past because I guess the context was there. So yeah, teaching.
Yeah.
Why'd you like to teach?
Uh, yeah, same reason as you,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. And just because I wanted to help students appreciate the courses as well. It feels good to
Mm-hmm.
be able to help them
Yeah.
understand. And I think, yeah, and I do that also even for my classes, at least for Triple
Mm-hmm.
E 151,
Mm-hmm.
so 101 before. It's really like one of the core subjects that I think students should learn. The way that you want, like the way you look at Triple E 41.
Mm-hmm.
I had, after teaching the course, I had this newfound appreciation of the subject, because
Yeah.
essentially, if you want to get into biomedical engineering or control systems, say you wanted to design
Mm-hmm.
prosthesis for the brain, or even for the upper limb, lower limb, if you want to get into rehab, neuroengineering,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of control systems involved, and we have to understand the basics, the fundamentals, or the tools that will help
Yeah.
us think from a bigger picture. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I really like about teaching. I love mentoring students and exploring
Mm-hmm.
new things with them,
Yeah.
and the fact that you're also learning, yeah,
Yeah.
as you go through the journey
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with those students. So, and also that's why that's I think that's also one of the reasons why we want to pursue further
Yeah.
studies, diba?
Yeah. We study something from the outside. That's something that's not that you
Yeah,
don't usually find in the Philippines. Then when you bring it here, oh hey, here's what I
exactly.
got from the
Yeah.
outside. Yeah. Yeah.
And further
Mm-hmm.
studies would give you that wider perspective that will allow us to craft
Yeah.
better stories,
Yeah.
for to help the students appreciate the fundamentals better. So I think, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense, that why you wanted to pursue masters and all that.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
the question is, but although I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask anyway. So after masters, you went to industry. So what's the main motivation for that?
Oh, okay. Um, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the blog, but um,
You did. You said financial
yeah,
downfall.
yeah, actually, but there's another reason too. I'll just say it. either way. When I was taking my master's, I took master's for 4 years. Don't do that. Master's should be 2 years long. But because when I was taking my master's degree, I had other sideline tasks. I was working in a project too in microlab, so I spent a lot of times, many sleepless nights to try to code firmware, not really microlab stuff. But it was a good experience too. I got to recognize what development boards were, those things, and then we went to Berkeley. That's where we saw each
Yeah, and
other.
you'll talk about that
Yeah.
later.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, when we went to Berkeley, okay, so that took time too. And then when we went back, I spent another year trying to year or two to work on my master's thesis. And I guess in that 4 years, what the difficult part was trying to come up with the master's thesis. Okay, and there were many things that there are many distractions and there are many mishaps that happened all throughout. So I took long. But in those 4 years, only 3 years, I was under a scholarship, the Picari Ched Scholarship, by the way. The scholarship only offered until 3 years only. So 1 year of not getting any allowance at all was a bit of a blow. So I really wanted to become independent. That's one thing. And I was also pressured by the timeline that I have to finish my master's because I was tied to the scholarship. The longer I stay, um, it's like I'm never gonna get away from this scholarship. I would never complete my master's degree. I wouldn't be able to terminate. Hey, I finished my master's already, and then you could already set the countdown timer for the return of service. Things like that. And yeah, I think two factors. One, financial downfall, and the second is I was pressured to finish my master's, and I got depressed that time because of that. And then I realized that for a moment in my master's, I was like, I did not. Everything I've done was all theory. I'm not really applying them at all. You know, which is kind of true, because when you study in the academe, you usually end up doing theoretical things. And that's what prompted me to say, okay, I think I need the experience in the industry where I'm going to apply it. And that's why I took ADI, which was a very nice opportunity because, hey, actually, I don't know if maybe it was divine intervention. I got into ADI when the pandemic started, and thankfully they allowed a work from home setting, which is a has pros and cons too. Okay, but yeah, that's what prompted me to take ADI. So,
Yeah. And as a side
mhm.
note to that, and I feel like based on what you said, it seems like you got burnt out essentially from being in the
Yeah,
university for a long time.
yeah. Actually, maybe part of it was in the last few months. It was really focused on accomplishing the MS thesis. It was all my energy was bombarded there. And you're doing just one thing every day, you eventually get out. I didn't have any variety anymore. Maybe that's one
Yeah.
factor.
Yeah. And that's why we really have to take the time to reset, recover, rejuvenate,
Yeah,
as they said.
do something else. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's
yeah.
one important thing that I'd like to mention also is getting internships even while you're still in school. So for the
Mhm,
undergrads, no. Although it's kind of difficult in the current setup that we
mhm,
are in
mhm.
remote learning because students are essentially required to pursue or to take mid-year
Yeah.
classes to be able to graduate on time. But
Mhm,
it's always a good um, practice to get some industry experience and internships because that actually prepares you for what
mhm.
is coming after you graduate, especially if you are looking to go to industry,
Yeah,
right?
actually, yeah.
And that's
Ah,
that's
mhm.
a that's something that I realized also when we went to Berkeley, when the time that we were
Mm,
in Berkeley, because every student would take, during summer, as early as
internship.
in their
Mhm.
freshman year in college, summer of their freshman year, they would go for internships already. But that's kind of different also in a sense that their education is really expensive. So they really couldn't
Yeah.
afford not taking a job or like an internship during their break, whereas we can
Yeah.
just, take the whole 2 months off and, stay at
Mhm.
home or something.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'll add to that too, because patalon-talon, I told you my life was really indecisive. It's like, where are you gonna go? I took an internship in Maxim back in third year. I was with Aldrin
Charleston?
Tonton. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
I was with
okay.
them. I was with them.
We were in ADI during that time. Yes,
Oh,
I
so
was
you were
with
with Wesley
West, Ruel,
and yeah, Wes.
yeah.
Well, very
Then
cool. Yeah.
IRC people, Albert
Yeah,
Bugayo,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
IRC people, myself, Luis, Tan, Carol.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I know internship was not required for us, but I think we took it out because for the fun of it. Yeah. But during that time in my internship, Maxi was a gate company, right? But that's when I realized that I don't think I want to work for a corporation. I wanted to teach. Or not really. I want to stay in school and probably do something, but not in a corporation. Yeah. But then right now, I got back to school. I took my master's. After a master's, I worked in ADI. And I think you're gonna ask later, oh ADI, but you're gonna take PhD then right after gonna go back to school. Um, I guess in ADI, I'm gonna jump right away if you don't mind, right?
Yeah.
But in ADI, ADI is a great company. Okay, like no doubt, it's a good one. It's like if I'm gonna recommend to my students, it's that if you want to get industry experience, take ADI. I don't
Yeah.
know about other companies too, but it's so good that I don't need to I don't need to check out other countries companies too, because it's that good. Okay. So now the question is, I plan to go back to school next year, January. I hope we can still
Ne-
see each other.
Next year. Yeah, next year. Yeah.
Yeah, January.
Okay.
So why am I gonna go leave ADI and go back to school for that reason? Um, because my passion really is just for teaching. Okay, that's the very gist of it. And no matter how good ADI is, I don't. They allow teaching to happen because we have our trainings and all that. But I'm trying really to explore something else right now, especially in the field of neuroscience. I wanted a lot of you see ADI, yeah, sure it's there, but I guess what I don't have is the extra time for me to study on my own, okay, because I have work to do. Right? I have to make contributions for the product I'm working on. I have to go to meetings. I don't really have the time for myself to take on these courses, you know, maintain my work-life balance. Because after work, you tend to feel tired already. I couldn't work on studying things I want to do. I don't really have all the time to teach, to tell my students. Even I have my students in 197 now. We still share stories even now and then. I'm trying to mentor them on these things. I don't really have that in media. Well, I don't blame media because I think I'm gonna get there in after several years later, talking more about how the operations go. Okay. But it's different when you're in the academy. Also, the other thing is I don't when you do research in a company, you research in the context that you're researching for business. Okay, you research to do two things. One is to how do you bring in more money, and second is how do you cut costs. Which is because it's a company, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it makes sense. It's a company, and I've actually consulted with many people. Actually, there's this guy I'm gonna shout out na lang, although I'm not sure if you can see it. This guy named Johan Ignacio. He's a good guy. There's this research program in ADI. I'm not gonna talk much about it, but it allows you to if you have it's like doing a business pitch. So maybe it's similar to what you do in technopreneurship. You do business pitches, right? So here in ADI we have that thing too, and then if your pitch is good, they're gonna do fund. They're gonna fund your project. And then Sir Johan was telling me about it. Okay. And I was inclined to do it too, but that only one thing that didn't really interest me is I have to put it in the context or constrain myself in the context that it's going to be a business. It's not bad, okay? I mean, I understand why, but part of me wants to research for the sake of research and adding to the body of knowledge, you know? And that includes finding things that are working and not working at the same time. You know? I've seen some papers explaining that their experiments failed, but that's added knowledge, right? I mean, it's added knowledge that, okay, don't
Yeah.
do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there are also good papers too that tell you, okay, this thing works, right? And then you're gonna learn from it. And that's the part where I want to be in. Research for the sake of research, and so much many more. I have this list of things between staying in the industry and the academia. But I guess a bottom line is not only academia has all my interest, but my passion is really towards the academic field, rather than
Yeah.
the industry. So that's why I'm deciding to go back.
100% agree with everything you said. I completely experienced the same thing when I was working in the industry as well.
Mhm, mhm,
So right, just sharing, right out of undergrad, I worked
mhm.
for a fintech company, a digital
Oh,
um,
really?
company. Well, digital leg of PLDT. I worked at Voyager for 2 years actually before I went to Berkeley to pursue my
Mhm,
master's. And honestly, the reason for that as well is because I couldn't afford to work for a project after graduation that
mhm.
would give a delayed salary. You know what I mean? Because I really cannot afford to ask for allowance once again.
Yeah.
So it seems like back then the perfect decision or the most rational decision that I could do is to get a stable job, and that is a job
Mhm,
in the industry. And I really enjoyed working for that company for 2 years. I think I did
mhm,
well. I learned a
mhm,
lot, especially with regards to how the
mhm, mhm,
corporations work, how the industry work, and that's
mhm.
great. But the thing is, it's not, it doesn't have that kind of, student mentorship I was looking for, the opportunity to
Yeah.
really pursue what you're interested in. And
Yes.
yeah, there is always some form of limitations that
Yeah.
aren't
Mhm.
really bad. It's just that it's not my cup of tea, or
Yeah,
but
true.
it's still weird because at this point in my life, when I'm thinking about what I wanted to do after PhD, I still want to work in the industry, but I wanted to be intentional about the kind of industry I would like to enter, and I would like it to be a industry in the medical device or healthcare field specifically, where I could use what I would be learning for my PhD training, like developing new technologies and such. And that's still something that I would be interested in doing, and something I really wanted to do aside from doing research and working in the university. And I think my point that is, I do understand where you're coming from and how you came up with the decision of going back to the university, because we have to be honest. The university gives us that kind of flexibility to kind of pursue what we want to pursue on the side, but that doesn't mean that we won't be working, say, overtime. You know what I mean? They say you have the
Yeah.
flexibility, but what you have is the flexibility to work on, say, this 45-hour work week that you want to
Yes.
work on. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you're gonna work less. It just means you're gonna work on things that maybe it's some things you
Mm-hmm.
don't really want to work on, but it's just part of the job. Just have to grind through it. But you can still,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to pursue this one thing, no one's gonna stop you from doing that.
Yeah. You have that freedom to how you
To
want to
burn
handle
out,
your work.
yeah, freedom
Yeah.
to burn out yourself the way you want to be burnt out.
Yeah. Well, it's a good
Yeah,
thing too, actually. That's one thing I also realized. It's the flexibility of time. I mean, although ADI encourages that, hey, you can just work wherever you want. You're not that strict on these meetings and all. You can. It's up to you how you want to delegate your tasks. But it, I don't know if it's just an illusion or something, but like for example, my routine at work is I start work at 7:30 in the morning. I end at around 4:45 to 5 in the afternoon. All year, all for all the days I was working ABI. But when I was in masters, okay, I believe I've been work more than 8 hours a day, maybe more than 40 hours. I think when you're in the academy, you tend to work more hours, but you don't think about it anymore. It's like I will start my day at around 9 or 10 in the morning, and then you just eventually see yourself ending up at 2 in the morning. But you don't feel always tired. I mean, you feel physically tired, but you don't feel that mentally tired at times. It's because maybe you're in the state of flow. You're just there in the zone, right? When you're in the academy. But yeah, that's what I also realized.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, now, okay, moving on to the other topic, which is about research. I think this is the third part. Is it the third
Mhm.
next part of our conversation? Research.
Yeah.
So you touched on it a little bit earlier. You wanted to get into neuroscience research or something.
Yeah. Mhm.
Why?
Okay,
How?
so
And
that's a
how did you
very
get?
good question, actually. And I want to attribute this to my to our visit in Berkeley.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so it's also related to my desire for teaching. Okay, because as I mentioned earlier, my mom was taking her master's in education. So she had books here that talk about how to teach better, or how actually there's a book. It's called How the Brain Learns by David Sousa. Okay, and I think it's like a people from the College of Education know this guy very well. Because at least that's what my mom tells me. Okay, and it's a really good book about how the brain learns. Okay, and he's telling you all the techniques on what to do. Okay, and then how it influences your thinking and all of that. Well, it started from there, really, about how the brain learns. Because as someone who really wants to help students learn a lot, I've been reading a lot from psychology to medical to even engineering. Okay. Uh, Literally, how can we improve the learning education here in the Philippines, right? Because I think it's a very important thing to do. Now, when I went to Berkeley, the topic which we were researching on a topic, it was introduced already in the Philippines, by our advice, which is really, hyperdimensional computing, right? It's actually something that's about the brain. It's a computing paradigm. It's a mathematical thing, okay, but it mimics the memory-centric structure of the brain because you see, the brain is not a computer, right? The brain is more of a hard drive. It's a big chunk of memory, and we don't compute. Like for example, when we say 1 plus 1, 10 times 10, we don't compute that. Okay? We we know that 1 plus 1 is 2 because by memory, we were taught that 1 plus 1 is 2. I mean, imagine, what if I told you 1 plus 1 is equal to 3? And I taught you that ever since you were born. It's embedded in our memory that that thing is meant to be that way. Okay. Here's another example. When you were young in your elementary years, remember, they didn't tell you to compute the multiplication table. What did they tell you? Memorize the multiplication table. Because the brain itself is a memory. It's not a computer. Okay. And that's what my research in Berkeley started was all about. That hyperdimensional computing thing. It's a mathematical framework that says, okay, this is how it's like a model rather, actually. This is how our memory works on things. How do you map features of an image or uh, signal into this memory, hyperdimensional memory thing? Okay. So that's the very idea about it. Now, during my time in Berkeley, I was reading things. There's this other book called On Intelligence. This one I have it here. Hold on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. I have these two books that I use for. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. Hold on. I have to take. I don't know.
Yeah, I see it. Okay, yeah, intelligence
on Intel. Well, the name's
on
On
intelligence.
Intelligence by a guy named Jeff Hawkins. It's not. It's a
Okay.
non-technical book. Okay, but it's a guy who's also he's also an engineer, micro engineer. Actually, he worked for Intel. Actually, was it Intel? But anyway, he worked for many companies, several companies, and then he was fascinated about the brain too. And then it's because I was inspired by this book to say, hey, let's think about the brain. And there's one thing he realized that the brain, or actually rather, of all the books that talk about the brain, okay, neuroscience or anything about the brain is just like space, is the field that has so many things that are still unknown. Okay? Even with the current technologies right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many things that we don't understand, right? Look. Um, there was a webinar yesterday about the brain neuroscience thing by UST. And then if you look at all the solutions that they had, they were all pharmaceutical solutions, drugs that you have to take in to, let's say, solve problems with Alzheimer's or dementia. Okay. So, it's usually drug enhancements or preventive medicines to that cause all these neural problems. Okay. So with all the technology, you'd figure out, is it really just drugs the only way to solve these things? Now, some projects like Elon Musk's, that Neuralink thing that he's doing on his cute little pigs in one of his videos. Yeah, that's gonna be invasive. Now, invasive, I know it's expensive, but what's the current thing that he can do right now? He can only sense. I think was it 2021 or 2020, but he had this video where he can sense the pig's neural connections and stuff like that. Okay, so it's just sensing, but he couldn't control it yet, right? Or things like that. So there's so many things about the brain,
Yeah. And I
right?
would argue that even though they
Mm-hmm.
could sense it, we still don't know a lot about it, that
Yeah.
we can interpret what is being sensed,
Yes.
and others are even saying that we aren't even in that stage yet wherein we can develop neurotech, and this is a very controversial discussion,
Yeah.
but there are
Yeah.
people who would say that we are still in the basic sciences, like we still need to
Yes.
understand a lot about neuroscience before we can actually engineer
Yes.
something. Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah.
go
That's
on.
that's what I agree on. And not only that, okay, just like anything we do in our research, right? Some concepts from a far away land or a far away field, and then actually two different concepts from two different fields, right? Completely mutually exclusive fields, but if you combine them together, suddenly you can come up with something new. That this thing that I was working on, the hyperdimensional computing thing, okay, it really was more about neuroscience things, right? And then they just brought it into the field of microelectronics, where okay, what if we use that model, that memory model that there's this guy called Pentti Canerva. He's really good. Neurosciences in Berkeley too. I forgot, was that Redwood Technologies or something, something like that. His model or idea, because we have the capabilities now to make microchips that can use models from another field, right? They brought it into a microchip, and then it actually works. It's a very efficient artificial intelligence unit, okay, for cognitive tasks like classification. Right? You know all this machine learning craze nowadays, right? And then if there's one thing common about them is that you need to have a graphics processing unit, and that's expensive in terms of energy and power. Okay, because you need to have this all this math, multiply, accumulate operations, with in floating point representations and things like that. But this hyperdimensional computing thing, no, we're just gonna use this, instead of using thousands of 64-bit representations. Here, just gonna use 1,000 bits to do classification, and that's it. Okay, so it's very energy efficient. Why? And where does it come from? Because it follows the how the brain works, right? See, that's what interests me, and how come why I want to take on neuroscience, right? Neuro neural computations. And I admit I'm no expert on it yet. And like you said, diba, neuroscience is at, let's say, we're at the bottom part of its research field still, right? We're in the at its infancy. That's what I also feel right now, right? Because it's so that's why I want to pursue it because while I'm starting out and there's so many things to explore. Wherever there is something unknown, that's the good place where you want to do research.
Yeah.
Because the fact that it's unknown, right, that means there's a lot of opportunities for research there. So that's the reason why I want to take up
Yeah.
your
And that's
application.
exactly why pursuing a PhD is the logical next step to do it.
Yes.
Because you're not yet an expert and you want to be an expert. So essentially, as we do, and I think it also applies to me, is
Mm-hmm.
as we discover more about this topic or about this field that we want to be an expert in,
Mm-hmm.
the logical step is to, earn a degree out of it as well. And that's
Yeah.
pursue a PhD and then later on start in your own research group or pursuing a postdoc or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's
I
that's
want
it.
to make, it may be a far-fetched idea, but in the long run, I also want to set up my own lab in school.
Yeah, and
Something
yeah, and
like,
I think that's reasonable. Yeah, that's reasonable,
right?
especially if you
Yeah.
want to pursue a career in academia.
Yeah.
At least in the US, how it works is if you are a tenure track professor,
Mm-hmm.
you naturally would be having your own lab,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
I just don't know why that is not the case here in UP. We still have like those clusters essentially. But it seems
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
each faculty still has their own research anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it's because of we don't have enough rooms or resources or yeah. Oh, by the
Yeah.
way, I'll ask you too. No? You mentioned a while ago that after PhD, you plan to take on an industry job after, or do you also plan to stay somewhere like industry and then you go back to academia, or like what's after PhD?
Right now, what I added in my essays, because I'm applying for this scholarship that asks, what are your immediate and long term intentions?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I mentioned that I hope to join or start a company engaging in rehab. So right now I want to get into rehabilitation engineering research. And then from
Mhm.
there, develop techniques that can be used for commercial use. And I think the reason for that is because I want to get that firsthand experience of developing technology from bench to clinic, essentially. So from its inception to the time it is used um, by the people, the intended users.
Mhm.
But I do understand that it's not always the case that you could start your own research and then see it and to fruition. So it doesn't necessarily have to, it could be, I mean, this company that I would be joining, that I would like to join after PhD could utilize a technology that's already existing, but it could also be, say, a technology that I got to develop, or something that I got
Mhm.
to develop during my PhD study. So that's something that I really wanted to do. And that I think traces back as well to my first engagement or my first experiences as an undergrad, or just seeing, um, how much health disparity we have here in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So for instance, so when I was an undergrad, we would go to
Mhm.
PGH to test our prototype, um, just ask questions, user feedback, and such. And then that was my first exposure to PGH back then. And honestly, walking along the hallways of that hospital, you will really see the gravity of health disparity that exists in the Philippines. And because you know why? Because you'll see ambulance coming all the way from Cavite, from Bicol,
Really?
even. So they would travel for hours just to access that medical care. But then I thought, I mean, during that time, I already was into health innovation. Like, how can I expand healthcare access? It's just a
Mhm.
matter of which specific area of healthcare I want to
Mhm. Mhm.
get into. And yeah, so basically, there's that aspiration. So since we're talking about
Mhm.
dreams and aspiration, there is that aspiration to address health inequity expand healthcare access, because
Yeah. Mhm.
you just see it here, and we see it even in my family. When since we live in the province, whenever we have to seek medical attention, we will travel 20-30 minutes for a checkup. And sometimes if you have to get admitted to a hospital, if
Mhm.
the nearest hospital cannot really accommodate your healthcare needs, have to travel to Manila 3 hours, to get
Mm.
medical attention. So that's really a problem. And I think one of the reasons why that is the case is because we have that shortage of access to medical technologies and essentially healthcare here in the Philippines. And one of the reasons that they say is because many of the medical devices that we have are actually imported. So that's the reason why, essentially, why I wanted to pursue industry experience, because I want to get that perspective, and at the same time I want to go back to the university. I don't know yet how. I mean, it's possible that you own a
Mhm.
company and then you work as a professor. I mean, a lot of people do that nowadays. And then I want to go back to the university because I really enjoy that mentorship research aspect of it, discovering new things, expand, contributing to knowledge, right? And also that, because I want, and I'm very vocal about this, and I even put this in my essays from last year and even essays for this year, is that I really wanted to establish a bioengineering or biomedical engineering academic program in the Philippines. Because, you can move clinical, I mean, you can say all these fancy terms of like moving technologies from bench to bedside, or technology development, or engineering research to clinical reality, but
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
won't really be it won't really make sense, or it won't really prosper
Mhm.
unless we have students who are capable of parang continuing that trajectory. And I
Mhm.
think that's where education comes in. That's why we have to educate students, engineering students, see the bigger picture, think like a clinician, understand the biology, the medicine aspect of it, and how your engineering would play a role to that. Because that's essentially what biomedical engineering is. It's intersection of biology, what life is, medicine, and how you respond to clinical care, healthcare, and then engineering, how you solve problems. So yeah, I think that's why I wanted to go to industry, or at least get industry experience, at the same time become a professor here. I mean, I want to go to UP because I really want to do that um, engineering. And I mean, I really want to promote biomedical engineering education. And I think at
Mhm.
this point, because we're in the pandemic, we have so many limitations. We're young, we're inexperienced.
Yeah.
The best thing that I could do really is to, start offering these electives, um, bring people together,
Yeah.
approach my seniors, essentially ask them if they could, give a talk,
Mhm.
handle this for co-handle with course with me and such. So yeah, essentially that's the big picture of it. And I think
Oh.
research is one part, one
Yeah.
part of that agenda, lifelong agenda, essentially.
That's so great. I mean, I like how you have this uh there's an end goal already to what you want to achieve.
Yeah, and
I
it
was
feels like
thinking,
it's really like a life, a long term.
yeah,
It's not like I'm not expecting it to happen in like 10 years or something, or 5 years.
baka hanggang it might reach until retire.
Until retirement. Could even be until
Yeah.
retirement, and that's fine.
Yeah, but I think it's a really nice one. But when you say, because the way I see it, parang, the way you just explained it to me right now, right? So you want to make a biomedical engineering group so that people who graduate from this program, or this degree, let's say, okay, they'll be able to contribute for the Philippine healthcare. And then you mentioned a while ago that the reason why we don't have all these resources for our healthcare is because they're all imported. And so we don't
Most
really have anything that's coming from within. Is that
Yeah,
what's happening?
yeah, most, if you look at devices that you use, even the pulse oximeters are manufactured somewhere else. Diba? Those are or even the high-tech ones, diba? Those are made by these companies abroad that we purchase and import to the Philippines. So what happens is, if this equipment suddenly malfunction, you have to buy
Yeah.
the spare part, and it's going to be expensive, and you're gonna have that you're gonna make that decision of whether or not you're going to purchase the spare part because it would increase the hospital bill of the patient and so on.
Mm.
So yeah, a lot of the medical companies that we have here in the Philippines are mostly distributors.
I see.
So it's like buy and
Mm.
sell essentially.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Mm.
the same case even for example, what is it Ma'am Tess is doing? They're establishing this, the one that Jean is working on. They're essentially
Yeah.
establishing this local
Their local microfab
microfabrication facility,
facility. Yeah.
which we didn't have in the Philippines, and they brought it. So it's kind of
Yeah, they have
similar
it
to
now.
that. Yeah. Yeah. And
I
the thing
see.
is, for biomed, it's a wide field as well. And we have all those expertise already. For example, after your PhD, you're working on a neuroscience research. You
Yeah.
know, it could be part of, I mean, you could contribute to the biomedical engineering part of it, work with
Mm-hmm.
neurologists, and all that. And it's just one part of it. We just need to have that platform that we
Yeah.
can really
Mm-hmm.
utilize. So research wise, what I really wanted to focus on is on rehabilitation at this point. Last year I thought it was in neuroengineering, but then I gave it a little bit more thought and read papers. I'm like, I'm not really into the computational part of it because it's kind of um, tangential already to neuroscience. But I really want into, kasi parang when you look into the, say, example, treatment procedure, for
Mm-hmm.
example, from the time that you get that disease, for example, you had stroke or something,
Yeah.
there's the diagnostic part of it, the time that
Mm-hmm.
you, or even prevention maybe, or like, yeah, diagnosis, no stroke, the treatment, and then your rehabilitation after it. So I
Mm-hmm.
realized I am more into that rehabilitation. Kasi yung process daw, there's the intervention, assessment, diagnosis, tapos para merong evaluation or something. And I realized I wanted to go more into the uh, rehabilitation. So I thought I wanted to get into neuroengineering, neuroscience, more research.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that I wanted to get into more of a rehabilitation or neuro
Rehab part.
rehabilitation. So
Yeah.
for you, di ba, parang you're more into technology, parang, I don't know,
Yeah.
how would you describe it?
Uh, more of the diagnostic part.
Or
you
like the
know,
tools that you would use to
yeah, just things like that.
acquire data and, process, I don't know,
Yes, acquiring any
neurotechnologies, ganon?
maybe that field is how I'd call it. Let's say it's more of the analysis part. Things like how can you make it easier for people to um, detect these issues ahead of time, because sometimes I'm not
Mm.
sure. I have not read the entire. I have not started my research portfolio yet on this, but the way I say it's like people don't have that the best predictive models yet. It's like
Mm.
people can predict based on past symptoms, right? If this person is gonna have the stroke or something, but most cases they get there already when they are having the stroke already, right? So something like way beforehand, like in determine it way ahead. But usually, there are also some scenarios too that I think I've seen where they were able to predict that someone's gonna get a stroke or there's something
Mm.
wrong with the veins of the heart
Right.
early on by early symptoms. But then they have to go through this rigorous and expensive diagnostic tests first. Like I think they have this, where they insert some kind of tube into your artery. And they're gonna plug in something like an ink. They're gonna go an X-ray machine to
Mhm.
find out if there are clogged veins or so. I forgot what they call it. No, stents or something. No, stents is
Ah,
the one
yeah,
where
no,
they
stent is for heart.
for heart.
Like the, yeah.
Yeah, but well, there are just some articles I read somewhere that they have to do those things, but those are expensive. I guess the part that I want to try right now is the reason why I want to study neural neuroscience is not only because I want to learn how the brain learns, but also figure out things like what are the informations that I can extract with the current technologies that I have. So it's more of the diagnostic or the analysis part. Because one thing that's
Mm.
challenging in neuroscience is um, they have these cathodes that they put in around the head, right? And
Yeah,
then
the electrode.
the electrodes, yeah, and then the quality kind of varies, depending on what kind of signals you're trying to extract. But it's not perfect still. Even after extracting the signal, they have this what post processing analysis and things like that. So somewhere in that.
Yeah.
Pero because of that,
Yeah.
I
I
think
ca-
maganda yung
yeah,
yung
I'm kind of
yeah.
interested in that one too, and that's why I'm having a little bit of a hard time really articulating what my research interests are dun
Mhm.
sa in my PhD applications. But I know when I see a research, I know if it's something that I would want to be involved in. You know what I mean? Yung ganun eh.
Yeah,
You'll see like,
yeah,
no, not that one. Oh, not that one. Like, not
yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that.
I think with your end goals that you want to do, and with of course with all the people in triple E right now, especially the young ones who are getting PhD, I think we can make something that
I hope
the
so.
end goal that you want
I
in the
hope
near
so. And
future.
after you also get your PhD, we can start collaborative projects in the
Yeah,
future.
that's gonna be exciting. I guess
Yeah.
maybe next time. Naka 2 hours na pala tayo. No?
Oh, yeah. And then our
Yeah,
next conversation will be about that. I mean, a follow up
yeah.
to this, because right now we're basically just talking about where we want to be, and then we'll do a follow up of what
How will we get
happened,
there?
how we
Yeah,
got there. Did we get there, or are there
yeah.
some setbacks to what happened?
Yeah. You might
All
know
right.
it changed our minds. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Great conversation. We're gonna end it here.
Yeah. Thank you, bro.
Thank you. That is it for this chat. If you like this episode or would like to suggest a future topic, let me know by sending me a quick message. I'm always looking for interesting conversations and hope to share more similar stories in the future. My Twitter handle is at roxalt, that's ROXSALT. You may also send me an email at roxalt.acc@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in and see you in the next one.